Olá, muito bom dia, ou melhor, boa tarde, né?
Good afternoon and welcome to our event. It's a reason of joy for us to receive you all here. We are very honored with your presence. For those of you at home, a big thank you to through B3 TV or via 3tentos YouTube channel. This is a very special day for all of us. It's a day where we celebrate 1 year since 3tentos IPO. This is the 3tentos Day. I'd like to ask for a round of applause for the company making history in Brazilian agriculture. It is a pleasure to be here today and share with you what we see happening across this very successful journey. I'd like to start by inviting you at home to follow me as we watch the following footage.
Com a perseverança de quem produz e com o mesmo ímpeto da agricultura brasileira, a 3tentos surge em 1995, com a visão de ser uma empresa de soluções para o agricultor.
Nós temos hoje uma empresa preparada, pronta, temos pessoas absolutamente engajadas, comprometidas.
Nós estamos em toda a cadeia do agronegócio, desde o planejamento de uma lavoura junto com o produtor, até um produto que está chegando na indústria e dali para a mesa das pessoas.
Insumos, grãos e indústria formam a base do nosso negócio, fortalecem as nossas ofertas. Possuindo 47 lojas no Rio Grande do Sul e 3 no Mato Grosso, totalizando 50 lojas, 2 parques industriais no Rio Grande do Sul e 1 parque industrial no Mato Grosso, 1 centro de pesquisa no Rio Grande do Sul e 1 centro de pesquisa no Mato Grosso, 2 unidades de beneficiamento de sementes, uma misturadora de fertilizantes. Nossa oferta tem início por meio da consultoria técnica, abastecida por uma área interna de pesquisa, desenvolvimento e inovação. Em conjunto com plataformas digitais, construímos com o agricultor um planejamento de lavoura, buscando otimizar recursos e maximizar a produtividade com sementes, fertilizantes, defensivos e o conhecimento aplicado por hectare. Além de planejar e prestar assistência técnica ao produtor, alavancamos a estrutura comercial da nossa rede de varejo para originar soja, trigo e milho, oferecendo ao agricultor uma solução completa para o ciclo produtivo, do plantio à venda da produção. Industrializar a soja originada nas unidades contempla o sistema de negócios da 3tentos, entregando ao mercado alimento e energia por meio de farelo e biodiesel. Estamos na vanguarda do agronegócio, incorporando pesquisa e desenvolvimento de soluções ao agricultor, além de disponibilizar uma interface digital, conectando cliente e consultores. Os nossos negócios, integrados às nossas soluções de consultoria, pesquisa, desenvolvimento, digital, serviços, logística, crédito e relacionamento, formam o ecossistema de ofertas mais completo do agronegócio brasileiro, permitindo à companhia atuar como uma verdadeira varejista. Todo esse ecossistema construído por e para aqueles que a empresa tem de mais valioso: nossos colaboradores e clientes. 3tentos, sempre parceiros.
Uma história de muito sucesso, um ecossistema completo.
A complete ecosystem, as you've seen, inputs, grains, industries, and throughout this couple of hours together, we'll be able to explore all that in detail. So let's now take a look at the program for the day. At noon we have started, then we're going to be talking about inputs, information on inputs in a very detailed fashion, and then we move on to grains and industry, starting at 1 p.m., and then we go until 1:25. We'll have a break of 25 minutes, and then we'll be back to try and understand where the company is going. Then at 2 o'clock, 2:05 to be precise, we will check what is not yet priced in future outlook. And then at 2:30, we'll have a Q&A session. It's important to remind you that those of you following us remotely and those here in person, you can all take notes and send us questions as we move on. And then at the end of our session, we'll have about 30 minutes to address your questions. Those questions are always welcome. Please make the most of that Q&A session. And that's how we start our journey today. So let's try and learn everything we can about the company. Let's start by inviting the company's CEO, Luiz Osório Dumoncel, and João Marcelo Dumoncel, 3tentos COO. Let's have a round of applause. Welcome. How are you guys doing? Good? What a special moment, right? I'm very honored to be here with you today, and I am also sure that our audience is eager to know what's happening at 3tentos. Over to you. Thank you, Kelly. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. For us, it is a great honor to be here on this very special day, or very special week, I might say, as we complete 1 year as a listed company. We've met many people throughout this period, and I think this place is very symbolic to that end. This is where we had BMF's, the São Paulo Stock Exchange, pit, and to have this space built here, and we as an agricultural company working in this ecosystem, to be able to receive you all here in person at this symbolic building, and all of you also remotely, this is very important. So for the next 3 hours, we want to be able to convey everything that is happening and everything that will happen with the company. That's our intent for the day. So once again, thank you very much for being here. The company's executive management is also here. They'll be here joining us on stage so that we can answer your questions, we can interact with you, especially as we talk about such an important topic for Brazil, which is agriculture. Good morning, everyone, both here and at home. It is a very special day. No doubt it's a great opportunity. 1 year as a listed company. The company is 27 years old, and we'll have time to talk a bit more about the company and to show what we have been doing, and especially what we see happening going forward for the company, how we see the future of the company. We cannot talk about future without going back in time and looking at our history. As I said, 27 years of history. We started back in 1995 when the company, with both of us here, along with our father, we started 3tentos producing seeds. That was our first business line. That's where we emerged. A seed company. We're working with the cultivar protection laws and other very important changes that were game changer for the market, and that became much more professional. So that's where our current act started. Important to mention, in the first years, 3tentos was founded in Santa Barbara do Sul, but we started expanding regionally right off the bat, close to Santa Barbara. We went first to neighboring cities. We opened new stores, new units, always replicating our business model. So very quickly, we understood that we had a model that was sustainable, that also added value to farmers and had the ability of being replicated. So that's how we started very early on, replicating this business model at the end of the 90s. Very important for us also was the year 2007, a landmark where we reached the missions market in the Rio Grande do Sul state. So we expanded towards a more challenging market, a new region. So we were no longer talking about neighboring cities, but we were talking about a broader region. We had access to a railway terminal, which was important for the higher volume of grains we were working with at the time. And this was the first steps we took in terms of logistics, something that to this date is a source of focus for us. So we work with considerable volumes, both in inputs and in grains, and also industry products. So logistics has always been an important topic for us. So this year, or that year, we started working the railway terminal to reach the Rio Grande port with grains and then soybean meal, and also bringing back fertilizers, in other words, making the whole process more optimized. In 2013, another landmark for the company, we had consolidated our grains and input operations very grounded. Then we took another step to close the loop of this ecosystem, which was to process soybeans. We had already significant amount of originated soybeans through barter. Because of our logistic position, we saw a good fit to go to the industry side of soybean processing. This started in 2011, and then in 2013, we had our soybean processing unit up and running in Ijuí, producing soybean meal and biodiesel as well. That opened up new avenues for us in that region. The southern half of the state. So in 2015, we went down south, starting in the city of Pelotas, which is closer to the southernmost area of the state. And then we developed work towards soybeans, which was growing in that region. If you don't know the area, we're talking about lower land areas where they usually plant irrigated rice, but they started to combine in a system of crop rotation with soybeans. And then 3tentos fostered the inclusion of soybeans and then cattle raising and rice crops as well. In 2019, as we consolidated the company in the area, we started our second industry. We acquired a plant in Cruz Alta, close to Ijuí, also with an important logistics connection through railway. We always have this concern with logistics, as I said, and then we reinforced our oil production for biodiesel, and also we reinforced the production of soybean meal now that we had a crushing unit in Cruz Alta. Then we get to 2020. The company finally consolidated. We already had 40 stores across the state, 2 industrial plants, a very robust logistics operation, our work with seeds, fertilizers, crop protection products, originating grains, and then we turned 25. And that's when we realized that this was the first year of the next 25. This happened in 2021, last year. This was a very important year. That's when we did our IPO here at B3. We became a listed company, and we started expanding towards the state of Mato Grosso. So this is a brief view of our story. So again, replicating our business model across different regions through a very strong interaction with farmers and adding value to the whole chain at the end of the day. That past allows us to speak about this next slide. In 2021, we have those numbers. We reached sales of 5.3 billion BRL, a consistent growth. And I want to reinforce this, that those 3 pillars, those 3 sectors that we operate, inputs with a close contact with farmers and growers, always with an eye on innovation technologies, and then grains originated from that investment made by growers, sales, logistics, and processing plants in the case of soybeans. All of that brings about a unique synergy to the company. Those indicators you see on the screen are important for us to have them in mind in our radar, and have in mind that we care about people. Also, we have 1,700 employees working with us today on a constant learning curve, and they have in their very DNA sustainable agriculture, state-of-the-art technology, results-driven technology, results-driven agricultural practices. So that synergy across inputs, grains, and industry, the way we do it, is something very important. It is, like I said, a unique advantage that we bring to the market. So let's move on, Kelly. Thank you, you both, Luis, João Marcelo. We'll see you again in a moment, okay? Thank you so much. And now we'll start our first discussion session. It'll be about inputs. Very well. So to get started, I'd like to call to stage Eduardo Menezes, Commercial Director. Let's give him a round of applause. Welcome, Eduardo. Good afternoon. Good morning, Kelly. Good afternoon, everyone. Those here in person, those remotely watching us, all our clients, our friends, and especially a big thank you to our employees who are now working at our units, unit managers, the whole team, who are making our days better. We have an important bit of information to share with you. 29% of the company's revenue comes from inputs, correct? 29%. So I'll give it over to you now, Eduardo. I'd like you to break that down for us a bit. The retail business for 3tentos, okay? All right, as Kelly said, inputs is one of the pillars of our business. It accounts for 1/3, give or take, of our sales. And this should remain so in the future until 2025 as we forecast. And that's what we plan also going forward. A very important segment. We work in inputs, retails, fertilizer, seeds, crop protection products. It is an important link in our chain as we get in contact with farmers. So now, this is how important our stores are. That's where all that relationship with farmers began, through our stores. This is an image of our office where we welcome our farmers, growers. We have our first contact where we first start working on planning their crops. That's where we start making our recommendations and offering management solutions to our farmers. And it is at the store level that we organize logistics around inputs and are able to supply farms with those inputs. At those stores, once they are supplied, they are able to service our client base in their respective regions. So in each store, we also have grain storage facilities. So all the grains that we originate, be it soybeans to supply industries, but also soybeans that we use for trading. We also originate wheat and corn. So that this is a snapshot that represents the model units that we have. So until the end of 22, we'll have 57 units, 54 of which already working according to that model that you can see on the screen. That mock-up represents a unit that we called G unit, G as in golf, some specificities, but we have 4 bins on the top side, and we have classified M with 2 bins, and then 1 bin, and GGs where we have grain bins, which are larger, so they're differently classified. So I'd like to invite you to watch a video now of a store in Santa Maria, in the central part of the state of Rio Grande do Sul. As Marcelo mentioned, where we also service irrigated rice growers. So there you can see the store in the foreground, in the background, the input storage area for seeds also. Our consultant at Santa Maria. We are now loading trucks. Sometimes we deliver the products. Then our consultants are on the ground at the field, and our grain origination and then harvesting. Oftentimes, we also provide grain logistics services as well. So there's a whole journey there where there we see the grain arriving at the unit, classification, unloading, and then storage at the bins until we get to the end of the logistics cycle. Moving on, and here I have a bit of our growth curve in terms of number of stores. Those 57 that I mentioned just now that we expect to have by the end of 2022. We are coming from 40 stores, as João Marcelo mentioned, late 2020. In other words, we are going to close the year with an additional 17 new stores out of a plan of 30 new stores by 2025. In other words, we are already past half that journey in 2 years. So we are moving forward really well in a good pace, and we're going to expand the number of stores until the end of the year and more than 45%. That's quite a challenge for us to replicate the model across all those new stores. And in terms of technical consultants or sales consultants, as we see in the red curve, a growth above 50%. Also a main challenge to bring good people to the business. So the values underlying the brand, reliability is one of them. That's important because that helps us attract talented people from the market. In Mato Grosso, the consolidation of major players in the area perhaps has made our lives a little easier, but our brand, the way we do things, allows us to have such a sharp growth in terms of stores and personnel. And that's how we are able to grow at that pace. In Mato Grosso state alone, the 3 stores which are already operational and 2 other which are being built right now have already accounted for 12% of the quarter's revenue for inputs. So we are being quite successful. That's a message I'd like to convey to you. We are very confident in what we're doing in terms of growing. That's what I had, Kelly, for now. Thank you. Oh, thank you, Eduardo. Thank you for your insights. It's really an impressive level of growth, number of stores, number of consultants, and also a vigorous level of growth. We'll move ahead. We have just heard Eduardo. We'll now hear Ben-Hur Vioni. He is Inputs Director. Please welcome.
Good afternoon, Kelly. It's great to have you here. So, Ben-Hur will be explaining why 3tentos retail is different from that of other companies. All right. To be different is a huge challenge. To 3tentos, we mean be different means be relevant to both customers and partners alike. When we look at the concept of relevance, how is the market organized in terms of customer access? One concept, you are flagged, you're limited. It's not a wholesome solution, and you do not have a lot of flexibility, you are held hostage to that partner. On the other hand, you had that multi-flag structure. You add complexity when you have several suppliers, you have no focus, teams are not engaged at all. To us, we see things that the person in the middle of these two strategies will be able to then provide that relevance. That has focus on R&D. We try to anticipate products, scenarios, trends, and then we implement that competitiveness with a lot of focus. It's a robust portfolio, and it is supplementary, so we can provide that complete solution to customers. And that combines with the whole ecosystem, providing grains and the plants, and etc. And at the same time, we can customize those solutions on a regional scale. In a nutshell, being relevant to customers and partners. Of course, there are some challenges in that portfolio. We actually try to build that portfolio, and I'll be explaining that in detail. CP, fertilizer specialties, and seeds, how we can become relevant there. In terms of crop protection, we do have partners that are very innovation focused, both on products, molecules, and innovation in the way they make things happen. At the same time, we have very good partners in formulations and post-patent activities. And we do have partners with different business models that provide us with the necessary competitiveness, closing that loop in crop protection. As far as specialties are concerned, we look for partners that can provide a good quality product with good technical delivery. Foliar nutrition, bio nutrition, solutions that actually can support and complement our CP portfolio. As far as fertilizers go, strategy changes a little. We do have a strong link with domestic partners. 70% of the fertilizers we sell come from these partnerships. But having our own brand, the 3tentos brand, that provides us with that consistency, especially in terms of information when we discuss the other 70% with the local market, and we can synchronize that to our business model. In logistics, which is very relevant to fertilizers, just by sending meal to one port and bringing in a raw material for your formulation, that's a huge competitive advantage. In conclusion, seeds. We operate strategically in soybeans and wheat seed production. 90% are sold directly to our customers, our farmers, and we are present in the trading area, triticale, hybrid rice, seeds, cover crops, and corn. And seeds, let me remind you, it's a huge challenge because it integrates more and more technological and biotechnological solutions. Being able to understand the portfolio, you can be a relevant player in that process, which is it doesn't get any slower. This concludes our input portfolio. And here's the challenge. How can you take that entire portfolio, which is very supplementary in nature, how can we generate information, knowledge, and an appropriate solution, be it technical or economic? And here comes another strength of ours. We do believe in our R&D. We generate a lot of information, a lot of knowledge. This is relevant to us, and it's relevant to farmers in the end. So the basis of our knowledge of what we deliver to customers is right here. 2 research centers, one in Santa Barbara and another one in Mato Grosso, being developed as the other businesses. So the research activities there is up to par, up to speed with the field. However, that kind of information has to be appropriate to that region. That's why we have 15 test areas. They're scattered throughout the state so that I can quickly identify what the demand of our customers are and providing them, of course, solutions that are relevant. And in order to do so, in all the 10,000 areas, we have a highly skilled team of professionals. 30% are PhD, others with master's degree, and specialists that can understand what solutions we have, and we can come up with the right solution to farmers. And then comes another question. If you sell the product, how can you provide that credibility? How can you segment it so farmers can really trust your opinion? It's a matter of trust building. And that team has been building very consistent relations with several research institutions, and Brapa is just one example there. That's, of course, builds up that trust, that builds that foundation to farmers and our consultants. Everyone has to believe that whatever is being generated in over 12,000 plots is actually precise, accurate information they can trust and take that to the farmer. We run these trials in all these plots. We interact with CP, fertilizer specialties, and seeds so that we can better understand how can we come up with the proper solution to farmers. Let me point out the fact that we're including more and more biological products. More than 10% of our trials already bring in some sort of biological product. We've been constantly focusing because we know it's becoming more and more relevant as time goes by. It's going to be fantastic to farmers. We believe that firmly. Let's take a look at some pictures now. Each one of these plots, it's an actual picture. There's no Photoshop involved there. This is for wheat, corn, soybeans. Every piece of information is a combination of fertilizers, seed, chemicals, and specialties information that can translate to better technical options, and way more than that, better economic decisions can be made. These pictures are not just beautiful. They actually translate what our research and development team does on a daily basis and try to implement everywhere we operate. And after generating a lot of information, of course, I must have that discipline to train, and train again to generate that demand. In sum, every 2 days, give or take, we train our team. Every 3 days, we're performing one action to create demand for customers and farmers. This is consistent, repeatable, with a lot of professionalism involved, of course. Let me try to translate all that. Let me try to sum up in very practical terms. 8 years ago, we developed the Produzir Mais program. All 8 editions, we have managed to provide them with these gains. We're close to them. We provide more customized solutions to their management. This translates into a 6.2% yield gains, despite the weather, because better management decisions are not used only in favorable conditions. Results have to be positive no matter what the conditions are. We have to operate very professionally, therefore. 3tentos is not a company that sells fertilizers, seeds, chemicals, and specialties. 3tentos wants to be close to our customer, providing them with a solution. We like to be on the field. We know what to do with the information we collect from the field. This is a statement that symbolizes what we do. Our product is management. This is what we want to do. We want to generate information time and time again to make sure that inputs, value chain can actually provide that positive information and therefore become relevant. Thank you. I have a hard time, but I finished on time. Our product is management. This symbolizes this complete ecosystem. And we do that on a daily basis. We know that customized management and consistent relationships can be translated into productivity and yields. Thank you. Have you heard several key words? He talked about consistent relations with farmers, Embrapa, the industry, seeds, fertilizers, crop protection. He even mentioned something that is different. Be different is be relevant. How can you be relevant in a state-of-the-art technology? And one of the ways is to find more alternatives to provide better yields. And now Alan Arauji, our marketing director, will touch upon these topics. Let's give it up for Alan. Hello. Thank you. Thank you all for being here. Alan, we had some indication that part of that relationship is built through management, right? And you have a very successful program for over a decade. Can you talk about it? Of course. Over to you. Focus, let me point out what Ben-Ur said about the Produzir Mais program. This is the work of all those 140 reps. They do that with every farmer. Every rep, every consultant picks one farmer, and they do that side-by-side trial. The average yield gain, that prospect yield, is about 500,000 reals increase. If you take these 140 with an average gain of 500,000 reals, has 70 million reals. It's almost a new store, and we need no capex. So that's why this program is important. That shows our value propositions to serve, to be there on the field, and to deliver our R&D results, to train our people. Again, why is 3tentos different? Number one, we talk about technology all the time, right? But let me point out that before technology, you have something called human behavior. Everything we do today in technology, we're thinking about the farmer, what he or she does, what their journeys are, how they interact with these things on a daily basis. Everything that drives our technology is thinking about that guy. They're the driving force behind our business. We have to think about farmers. Let me address something to you. We purchase many products online, right? Have you heard of 3tentos app stores? The logic is inverted. It's not the customer that comes to purchase. This is the customer selling. And why am I talking about this? Customers sell the grain. It's an inverted logic. That's why it's important to understand how this works. Is that clear? Just like Luis talked about it, we have over 4,000 app users. 80 million reals have been traded in soybean contracts. They sold soybeans to 3tentos using the app. Everything supported by a team that can generate digital demand on the field. What's that? So our team helps farmers. They're not digital native. Of course, farmers are becoming younger and younger. They're more prone to technology, right? But some need that help so that you have more familiarity with the whole system. Thinking about the farmer, right? Let me now talk about our team, our consultants. Here's what we're doing. Terra 3 is our agronomic intelligence platform. Our teams feeds up the information. They map out our customers. They have the entire products and services portfolio of 3tentos, and they can manage their customers using the platform. Let's watch this video. This is the mapping area. This is a specific consultant. They can map out every plot. They can pin on the map every plot of their farm or their customers, and they can check the health of that plot. What can they do with that information? They can intervene even before the problem happens. Our consultants can therefore be more effective in their time management. They can edit the entire management strategy. They get information from that PDI that Benet talked about. Everything is research-based. Again, our product is management. They can keep track of their performance indicators, their goals, their share of wallet, the treated area by product mix, so they can manage everything here. He or she can have insights as to what they can do to offer more products and services to their customers. That's the goal of this tool. Passion to serve. I'm also a farmer. My dad was a farmer. My entire family is a farmer. I've been with the company for over 10 years now. I know farmers need that support. Once they feel they're being taken care of, you establish that trust. So, customers are the best people to talk about the company.
Que foi uma alegria só, né? Porque até então sempre tínhamos um bom entendimento, uma boa parceria e uma grande amizade que se criou com 3tentos, com família 3tentos, com funcionários 3tentos, com a direção 3tentos. E nesse passar dos anos aqui fora passou vários consultores da 3tentos, porque até mesmo já fazem 24 anos que a gente trabalha com a 3tentos. E nesses últimos 10 anos agora o Guilherme está com nós aqui. Até brinco que o Guilherme hoje já tem o poder de 99% das decisões a serem tomadas aqui fora pelo manejo a ser feito, né? Só não tem esse 1% por orgulho próprio meu que eu não deixo entregar o 100% para ele, né? E eu torço que a 3tentos continue sempre forte. Porque é só assim a gente também, a chance de ficar forte sempre é muito grande.
E o apoio da 3tentos sempre conosco, toda a equipe, desde do gerente ao apoio técnico, ao Matias, ao pessoal do escritório, né? Tudo, envolveu todo mundo.
Ela deu todo o apoio necessário para a gente dar a largada, para começar algo novo. Você tem que abrir o campo, você tem que adubar o campo, você tem que preparar o solo, você tem que fazer toda a parte técnica. E a 3tentos acreditou na gente.
Deu apoio para tudo, né?
Eles sabiam que a gente era capaz de conseguir fazer, de conseguir acreditar em produzir numa região diferente. Começar desde o começo, do zero.
Produtores. Um produtor.
There are farmers that are better structured and even smaller farmers. And that guy said, they believed in us. What does that mean? To know the family, to know that they're hard worker, and they're going to make it. They'll start with 50, 100 hectares, but in 15, 20 years' time, they'll have 500, 1,000 hectares, and they'll keep on farming. All right, coming to the home stretch. You've seen two farmers, right? These are the ways we can reach farmers: through stores, consultants, field days, WhatsApp, social media, the app. But these guys have different profiles. You've seen two profiles, but you have a whole set of different profiles. It's an opportunity-based market. It's a 49 billion input market, 91 billion of grain opportunities, and we have to get to know these people and find out what their needs are. And in order to do so, let me invite you to this trip to a farm. That's a day in the life of a farmer. A farmer is not a farmer overnight, right? They come from that family of farmers, maybe second generation, maybe third generation. They have that passion to produce. Here's the farmer, here's the production system. Farmers have different production systems. Soybean, wheat, corn, soybean, cattle raised, soybean, soy, cattle raised, and rice. Several rotations with cattle raising, without it, with rice or corn. This is their production system, right? But that person has to make daily decisions to make. These decisions are influenced by a very different circle depending on the situation. They know who the consultants are. They have conversations with traders. They watch YouTube videos. They watch Kelly Severo's content and someone who makes them make decisions depending on their profile, right? And then, let me just take a step back. Inputs, purchasing decisions. They have to purchase inputs, right? And by doing so, that may be related to costs or not. They can purchase through barter. They can finance it. They may need credit. They can go to the bank and ask for a loan. And that's that initial phase of their journey. What they're buying and how they're buying it. And what their financial profile is. And Luis Fernando will be talking about that in a minute. Everything is green here. Why is it green? This is their operation. What's the machinery, profile, seeding? Once seeding is done, 60% of the cost is done. And that yield ceiling has been determined. They can only lose from this point on. And that's where you see the importance of consultants to be there throughout the management phase. But this guy with the management and operation, they're thinking about commodities all the time to pick the best prices for both soybeans, corn, wheat, whether I resort to barter or not. That's part of their journey. And then you have the pleasure section, the celebration, the harvest. Every farmer loves a good harvest. And it's important for them and for us as a whole. In the end, you have that report. It's not a financial report in the end. For the crop season, the statement is soybeans. In this plot, I produce this much, I spend this much, this is the remainder. And then there's that perspective. Where am I going to send my production? That's the power of the ecosystem. Once they trust that surplus to a company, they're connected to a 3tentos throughout the year, throughout the entire process. Then there's maintenance to maintain the farm as a whole, and in yellow, in gold, two things that farmers love: machines and expand. Almost every farmer loves to expand, to grow, to produce more. And then we start another production or productive cycle. In a nutshell, everything we think about technology, in terms of offerings, proposals, everything has to take into account this entire ecosystem. This is the framework of current and tomorrow's behaviors of farmers. And every step, producing mice, PDI, Field Academy, barter, marketplace, one will be addressing that, and digital areas. All these actions think about this entire ecosystem. Thank you once again for coming. Over to you, Kelly. Congratulations. That's a beautiful journey. It's very easy to understand. The entire farmer's journey. That helps us understand the number of decisions that these people have to make. And that's how 3tentos play a key role to support farmers in making those decisions. They have to understand sustainability, digitalization, how to sell their production, logistics, and you're there building that very solid relationship for quite a long time. Thank you. Thank you. I liked what Alan said about some key elements of what we can expect from farmers. And one of the characteristics of farmers is that desire to expand, to grow, and to connect to that growth. 3tentos is growing. Eduardo, let's talk about the differences and similarities between Rio Grande do Sul and Mato Grosso, where you are now expanding. Of course, Kelly, no problem. The major challenge of 2021. João Marcelo told that beautiful story, opening up new stores, growing regionally, and then the industrialization portion, that was very challenging, and then expanding to the southernmost portion of Rio Grande do Sul, and in 2021, the challenge to move on to a new market, to the state of Mato Grosso. Everyone talks about it. There's so much competition. The size is huge, with so many opportunities to us at 3tentos. We understood the model, and we took that challenge head on. I worked there for 4 years. Many of our colleagues worked there too. And we were confident that 3tentos would be successful there because of the culture, the farmers there, and we are a very simple company, research-based company, and we were confident that we would be successful in that new market. Let me talk about that market characteristics. The evolution there was similar. We have a 2.8% CAGR for soybeans, most of it in the southern half of the state, and 3.5% in Mato Grosso. These are areas that expand, and expansion requires technical assistance, support, barter, so that it can happen.
There's also the way of how competitive we are in each respective region. So in the center of Rio Grande do Sul, where we were founded 27 years ago, that's the most competitive area in the state. That's where we learned how to be competitive, how to distinguish ourselves. That's where we grew. We moved to the southern half of the state, where there are fewer competitors, with cattle raising and irrigated rice as alternative activities. That's a different model of farmers, mid to large size growers. And we were able to adapt and also play an important role in that market as well. And now we have a challenge in Mato Grosso. We started in the most competitive region along Highway 163, but we want this first wave of growth encompasses a very strong expansion area, Matupá, Alta Floresta, and Porto dos Gaúchos. So that ecosystem that brings people, consultants on board to our R&D centers, our suppliers who are also bringing us information, all of that combined has allowed us to replicate that model in Mato Grosso as well. Our average in Rio Grande do Sul exceeds 50 million per store, and the market averages 27 million per store in terms of inputs. In Mato Grosso, the market has an average of 135 million in sales of inputs per store, and we have already reached the level 100 million per store. That's the challenge, and we're doing really well there as well. In summary, my last slide, what similarities have we identified in both markets? As Alan mentioned, the passion for serving is one of them. Our team needs to know the needs of growers. Technical support also important around agricultural management. So our team needs to be ready to convey confidence in the decision-making process. With the exception of the large agri companies, we may change the scale of growers, but the needs for solutions, for cash flow, the needs are the same. They also need barter to grow, for example, grain sales. And our ecosystem takes along industry and plants, along with the stores, new technologies in terms of new traits, biotechnology traits that will bring solution for weed-resistant management, disease resistance management. Our resellers with a complete model, selling inputs and grains and working with grains, new products, as Bengur said, this new wave of biologicals, bioactivators, which will no doubt take yields to a different level for soybeans, corn, wheat, rice, all crops. And lastly, logistics of inputs and grains, which also sets us apart. What I've just shown, what we do at the store level, we bring about convenience to farmers. So we tried to draw an analogy of what we deliver to farmers, and that of course also appears in Mato Grosso, where we started working in mid last year. That's what I had. Very good, Eduardo. Thank you for all the information, and we carry on. Thank you, Kelly. Enjoy the event. Very interesting for us to see those similarities across Rio Grande and Mato Grosso. We'll now try to go back to the beginning. We showed that mandala with inputs and grains and industry. Let's look at it again to see where we stand. Right now, we have concentrated our conversation around inputs, seeds, fertilizers, crop protection. From now on, we're going to move forward and address those two other points, grains and industry. So let's move on.
Grãos e indústria são dois.
Grains and industry are two elements that complete Três Tentos ecosystem. And to address that, we'd like to invite Três Tentos CEO Luis Osorio. Please join us on stage and tell us what's happening around those two segments. Over to you. Thank you, Kelly. I think it's easy for us to talk about this after hearing what our directors had to say about inputs, seeds, chemicals, fertilizers, specialties, and all the work that is done close to farmers. So that's easy to understand our results when we go to harvest, the moment when farmers really capture their gains and make their plannings. And we are there side by side with them. Today in Rio Grande do Sul, we have about 18,000 customers, give or take. We know that the state has 96,000 farmers. And not all of them, of course, but we have a significant portion of those farmers well mapped out. We know that Mato Grosso has about 7,000 growers and farmers, and all of them have the same objective, to produce more and to produce better, more sustainably. And we do all that work. We provide all that synergy with a capacity of over 1 million static tons. We know that soybean grains, wheat, and corn grains, we know what they account for in the interaction from January 1st through December 31st for each and every farm. The soybean industry for us, of course, is a consequence. It's something we added to what we have in the field. And we are able to create jobs. People stay in the field. They want to become professionals and work in the field because they have better results. This is a bit of what we do with that production, along with farmers, of course. We're going to be talking about safety, and safety means being able to hedge our investments. We do not take risks. We walk side by side with farmers. With corn and wheat, we work with the trading of those two products, exclusively trading for internal and external foreign markets. Soybeans, we allocate 20% for trading, 80% goes to industry for meal, oil, and biodiesel. We are sure, we are confident, we know the numbers. We talk to you, investors, every quarter. We talk about how much value this adds to the company and how much more competitive we become with all of that. And the results, all of that combined, brings to the table in terms of growth for our customers. We are quite focused in generating value to our customers. How do we originate grains? In Rio Grande do Sul, we've been there for 27 years, as you know. In 2017 through 2021, there on the slide. 2022 and then 2025, originating soybean this year with a failure of over 50% in the south. We're still going to over 1.1 million. Last year we had a record crop with 22.3 million tons. 3tentos originated 1.2 million of those. And if we think about all the grains today, we are now originating over 1.5 million tons, and we will get to 2025 with over 2.3 million tons allocated towards trading and also to the industry, oil and meal. And in Mato Grosso do Sul, we are now going, we went to Mato Grosso, and yes, we are. That's a state where they plant 11 million hectares of soybeans. They produce 40 million tons in the state, the largest producing state in the world. The city of Sorriso, where we have a plant, is the largest city in the world producing soybeans, and Três Tentos is also there. It's our northernmost unit in Mato Grosso. And we have seen incredible growth in corn as well, 6 million hectares and also 40 million tons producing. We're going closer to Highway 163. Vale do Araguaia and Parecis are not appearing in that map, by chance. They're there for a reason. And how do we trade those products? This makes it really clear how we are close to logistics, how it is important for us to be close to farmers. Out of those two industries or two units back in the Rio Grande do Sul, from there we can reach thousands and thousands of farmers, taking inputs and also originating grains. And in Mato Grosso, the same. It's not for nothing that we have this flow, this railway flow towards Rondonópolis, up to the north and down to the south. In other words, using rivers and getting closer to exporting our products. Thank you, Luis. Thank you for your remarks. Congratulations on your work. Luis talked about grains and industry, and you saw on the screen it's all linked with the market dynamics, both here and abroad, governed by supply and demand. Nowadays, geopolitics also playing a role there. And we'll now address another element highlighted by Luis. He said that they're always focused on hedging and on safety. Let's try to understand the international agribusiness world and the management strategies for risk with Eduardo Sanchez. He is a risk management consultant, and he comes from StoneX. Let's give it up for our friend Eduardo. Hi, Eduardo. Good afternoon, Kelly. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the chance. Luis, João, 18 years we've been together. Good. So, Eduardo, we're going to be here and chat about risk. The first aspect we'd like to address with you is on the supply side. Where are we there? Let's talk about something you understand, right? You like to challenge me because you know where the price is going. Nobody knows that. I can tell you that right from the start. But soybean and corn, we could talk about other commodities, meal, biodiesel, oil, but the growth in acreage and soybean and corn in Brazil could also be addressed. But none of that would have happened if we didn't have farmers doing their thing, doing their homework in-house. That's where we have the first slice of 3tentos ecosystem. That is, being close to farmers so that they can produce more and more. The challenge and the opportunity for grains in Brazil lie not only in the first half, but also in the second half of those charts. If we look specifically for soybeans, 126 million tons crop from the USDA and CONAB. As a company, we're talking about 126 million. But if we look at that soybean offer in Brazil, 77 million going to exports, and if we focus on the 50 million tons which will remain inside to be crushed, that's where we see a huge opportunity for Brazil to add value. That's a key point. A lot of room to grow in Brazil there. When I talk about value-added process, I'm talking about energy through biodiesel. I'm talking about soybean meal to feed swine, fish, swines. And the other half, when you go to corn, is to look at the potential we have in terms of ethanol production in Brazil. If we look at the corn chain, we export about 40 million tons. This year, once again, China has started to open their eyes to Brazilian corn. Not this year, but perhaps next year we'll see an impact. We can expect to export 40 million tons of corn. 75 million tons of corn are consumed internally. If we only look at ethanol, that accounts for 13 million tons. So that's the size of the potential we see if we foster that growth in Brazil. Not only looking at exports, the world looks at exports, and we do too, of course, but adding value to the finished product. And then we can export the finished product. Interesting. That makes it really clear, right? The growth in production vis-a-vis growth in acreage. We are growing more in production than in acreage. Now, going back to the supply side, we're coming from crop failures. We have a balance of supply and demand across the world, which is not really balanced now, right? Where is it going towards? What do we need to have in terms of supply going forward to feel more comfortable in terms of global inventories? Well, two things, Kelly. We need to look at this year and look at 2023. If we look at this year, yes, there is a production deficit there. If we look at the global balance, we'll be missing 17 million tons of soybeans to meet the demand. Of course, there are inventories around the world, but where are they, the inventories? But if we look at Brazil specifically, and it's a simple math to do, it's what's being produced, what's being grown, what we demand for exports and for the internal market. We would be short-handed in terms of soybeans. Of course, stocks, especially in Rio Grande, which is a state which usually has carryover inventory, they were able to somewhat balance that. But when I'm talking about supply and demand in Brazil, but when we look at the macro level, the world is already estimating a super crop in Brazil. The USDA for the next cycle is 149 million tons, but it's still too early. When you think about supply and demand, I like to keep in mind that this is a very sensitive moment we're going through right now. And you follow that every day, Kelly. And the next in line is the American crop. A lot to happen, but I'll be talking about that in my third slide. Okay, so we are now having a supply scenario which is being adjusted by exports, foreign exchange rate also helping with exports. You talked about the dynamics of the industry with higher demand, but you said that we need good crops to compensate those low inventories, right? So what makes grains continue growing as a segment? And that's the answer right there. Well, people need to eat, so demand is ever growing. So we're talking about a world scenario which points to a slowdown, but we need, when we talk about demand, we look at Asia all the time. You are all used to listening to that. This week, we heard that in 2023, India will exceed China in terms of population. And we do not pay enough attention to India, but we should be looking at India increasingly more. Remember what happened in China 20 years ago. This will now happen in India. There will be a change in India's purchasing power. They may change their eating habits, and Brazil will need to be there. China in 2017, 2018, we had that very serious problem of the avian problem with their swine herd dropped. Now they are back to 700 million head. Post-COVID, of course, they had a very serious problem with the swine fever, but they resumed good levels very, very quickly, and they increased technology, they increased mechanical processes, so they need better soybeans, they need better meal. They buy that from us. They will need to buy meal from us. They bought from Argentina. So I'm very optimistic around that growth, not only coming from Asia, but also for Brazil, actually. But I'm also optimistic about the growth potential in terms of adding value to products manufactured here. So one of the issues here is populational growth, helping consolidate demand, which is already high and will tend to remain high. We are coming from a supply level which needs to be offset because of crop failures. That's on your next slide. We see a risk of a global recession making the headlines. Agri-commodities seem to be more sensitive to that. My question is, will we see history repeat itself, or do we have the right fundamentals to maintain those prices. So commodity prices, well, that's difficult to talk about prices, because what helps make soybean prices is not only dependent on Chicago, right? And premium coming from Chicago. I have all those curves there because I am sure all of you here and at home, you see this every day. CRB index, Bloomberg index, and the US dollar index. Post-pandemic, we had a boom in the green curve and also in the purple curve, which is the appreciation of commodities across the board. Higher demand, shortage of products, but that has changed as of recent. But I continue to be bullish because, well, the world has brought about liquidity, money was brought into the economies, consumption levels increased or went back to what it was, and then that influx of money stopped. And we saw that drop on the right-hand side of the chart. You can see that. But that index does not only measure agri-commodities, they also measure mining, energy. If we focus only on soybeans, we are now going through a moment where the U.S., which is after Brazil, the second largest soybean grower in the world, the U.S. needs to play the role of someone who's offering, because we are coming out of a crop failure of 30 million tons. So we go back to our conversation earlier on. There is a deficit which is global. But right now, the market is not looking at the U.S. climate, whether or not it's going to rain. They're going through a bit of a drought, actually. But the market is looking at the macro level. And what does it say? It says recession, the highest inflation rate in the U.S. for the past 40 years, euro dropping down to U.S. dollar levels. So my opinion is that climate risks, or that potential supply problem we may have because of the American crop, that has not been priced in yet. It was, without this fear, of course, has negatively impacted that. But I do believe that at some point, the market will go back to analyzing fundamentals. Great. Thank you for your insights. We talked about supply, demand, and about the level of dissemination of those fears across the market. So, and we leave with your optimistic note, right? Thank you, Eduardo. Well, thank you. It is in this light of sustaining gains and opportunities for commodities, be it because the population in the world is growing, or be it because of this imbalance between supply and demand of grains. There are opportunities to be explored, opportunities being captured by 3tentos. Marcelo is going to come join us to tell us what you're doing to reap those opportunities. And you also have plans to expand, correct? Yes. Well, I'd like to invite you to take a look at Mato Grosso's units, one of the pillars of our investments in that state, and after the IPO, our main investment after the IPO. So let's look at the status of our investment in Mato Grosso.
Olá, eu sou o Marcelo Landa e hoje eu vou mostrar um tour na nossa unidade de Vera aqui no Mato Grosso. Nossa planta está sendo projetada para produzir 2.500 toneladas por dia de soja, inicialmente, já com um projeto de expansão futura para até 4.000 toneladas por dia. Nossa planta é a mais ao norte do Mato Grosso, né? Então tem uma logística privilegiada. A gente está na BR-163, que é o eixo mundial do agronegócio. A preparação está utilizando equipamentos de última tecnologia. A extração também a gente utiliza equipamentos de ponta para fazer todo o processo, tudo automatizado. Já o biodiesel para 1.000 metros cúbicos por dia. Temos depois o armazém de farelo, que já está sendo montado. Ele tem capacidade para até 30.000 toneladas de farelo. A gente tem separação para farelo de alta proteína e baixa proteína, para atender mercados externos e mercado interno. No fundo a gente tem uma caldeira de alta pressão, uma caldeira de 70 toneladas por hora, com 67 kg de pressão. Ela vai gerar vapor para uma turbina que vai gerar energia elétrica, onde vai tornar a nossa fábrica autossuficiente em vapor e energia elétrica. A gente está recebendo nesse momento a safra de milho. Esse milho a gente está fazendo trading, depois a gente deve expedir, vender ele num melhor momento, né? E a expectativa é que a gente, a partir de janeiro, comece a receber a safra da 2023 da soja, né? Que se inicia em janeiro aqui no Mato Grosso. E a partir de então, dentro do primeiro trimestre, a expectativa é já começar a esmagar essa soja para gerar farelo, gerar biodiesel, todos esses produtos aí industrializados. O produtor aqui do Mato Grosso pode contar então conosco para ser parceiros desde o início, desde o planejamento da lavoura até a entrega dos produtos finais. A gente veio realmente para firmar o pé aqui no Mato Grosso, né, atender da melhor forma esse mercado do agronegócio que hoje é o maior do país aqui.
E aí dá para dar uma rápida visão, isso aí deu.
A brief overview of what we had. This dates back to 2 weeks ago. Very fast pace of growing, and that delivery schedule will be updated and will be following it to the letter. We are already receiving corn now, as you saw, and later in the year we'll start receiving soybeans and start crushing operations. So the industries across Mato Grosso and also Rio Grande do Sul, where are they going to take us? Our growth scale for soybean meal and biodiesel is there on the screen. It'll take us to a level of 1.5 million tons of meal by 2025 and 450,000 cubic meters of biodiesel per year by 2025 as well. So that's the scale across Rio Grande with a slight growth now, especially in 2023, as we consolidate our expansion in Cruz Alta, and then with Mato Grosso adding a similar amount in terms of crushed volume and biodiesel production. So the biodiesel, once again, here on the screen. We have been following up on that. It remains as an important source of selling oil. 3tentos has always had and will continue to have arbitrage power between biodiesel and soybean oil. Export market, very liquid for soybean oil abroad. Brazil is an important exporter of soybean oil, and that will provide us a base for the market. And as for biodiesel, we increment margins. That's also a way to sell oil through biodiesel. We also have the C-Bios issue. We'll be talking about that in a moment. That has also brought about important value for the company and for the market. And also, of course, clean energy, renewable energy, always looking to be increasingly sustainable. Also, combining biodiesel with soybean meal, we see that actually what really matters for us is the crushing margin. The crushing margins come from the combination meal, biodiesel, or soybean oil, and that crush profit will sustain the business. It's through those margins that will achieve growth and good results across that industrial segment. I think we have come close to our coffee break. We've seen many things. Many things were said or have been said so far related to our ecosystem, but we can summarize that in a statement. Our success is the success of our farmers. So let's get Luis here on stage. Luis, please join us. And we'll now talk about the pillars around this vision that 3tentos has. Okay, Kelly, thank you. Yes, without a doubt, as we look to everything 3tentos has been doing, and I'll refer to the video footage from Mato Grosso, where we heard Mato Grosso Lando, mechanical engineer, saying that we are with them from the planning through harvest. So that feeling permeates the company as a whole. And that spells the fact that we are good on the field, planning, harvesting, shipping oil, soybean, corn, across the board. Or Leandro in Rio Grande, he's the plant manager there. So that for us is very important. And you've heard Ben-Hur, Eduardo, Alan, João Marcelo, myself, and we talk about this full of passion, full of confidence in the business we manage. And this level of confidence has to do not only with the confidence with farmers, farmers with the company, and the market with the company, the market. That safety, that reassurance is also reflected in the growth pace we'll continue to enjoy. Brazil is a huge opportunity in terms of growth, improvement in agribusiness. We still are. And of course, all of that, Kelly, all of that based on relationships, on partnerships, on trust. Something that we have with you, you have with us. We've been together for so many years, right? And that's the truth we want to convey to the market and to farmers. It is an honor for me to be here. We've been together for a long time, from Santa Barbara to this great day. Thank you for the partnership, for the trust. And now we close this pillar, grains and industry. So we'll be back in a moment. Thank you all. We have talked about inputs, grains, industry, and as scheduled, we now have a 20-minute break, and then we'll go back to Q&A, and where our specialists will address and have a high-quality conversation with you. So once again, 20 minutes. Enjoy your break. See you in a moment.
Com a perseverança de quem produz e com o mesmo ímpeto da agricultura brasileira, a 3tentos surge em 1995, com a visão de ser uma empresa de soluções para o agricultor.
Nós temos hoje uma empresa preparada, pronta, temos pessoas absolutamente engajadas, comprometidas.
Nós estamos em toda a cadeia do agronegócio, desde o planejamento de uma lavoura junto com o produtor, até um produto que está chegando na indústria e dali para a mesa das pessoas.
Insumos, grãos e indústria formam a base do nosso negócio, fortalecem as nossas ofertas. Possuindo 47 lojas no Rio Grande do Sul e 3 no Mato Grosso, totalizando 50 lojas, 2 parques industriais no Rio Grande do Sul e 1 parque industrial no Mato Grosso, 1 centro de pesquisa no Rio Grande do Sul e 1 centro de pesquisa no Mato Grosso, 2 unidades de beneficiamento de sementes, uma misturadora de fertilizantes. Nossa oferta tem início por meio da consultoria técnica, abastecida por uma área interna de pesquisa, desenvolvimento e inovação. Em conjunto com plataformas digitais, construímos com o agricultor um planejamento de lavoura, buscando otimizar recursos e maximizar a produtividade com sementes, fertilizantes, defensivos e o conhecimento aplicado por hectare. Além de planejar e prestar assistência técnica ao produtor, alavancamos a estrutura comercial da nossa rede de varejo para originar soja, trigo e milho, oferecendo ao agricultor uma solução completa para o ciclo produtivo, do plantio à venda da produção. Industrializar a soja originada nas unidades contempla o sistema de negócios da 3tentos, entregando ao mercado alimento e energia por meio de farelo e biodiesel. Estamos na vanguarda do agronegócio, incorporando pesquisa e desenvolvimento de soluções ao agricultor, além de disponibilizar uma interface digital, conectando cliente e consultores. Os nossos negócios, integrados às nossas soluções de consultoria, pesquisa, desenvolvimento, digital, serviços, logística, crédito e relacionamento, formam o ecossistema de ofertas mais completo do agronegócio brasileiro, permitindo à companhia atuar como uma verdadeira varejista. Todo esse ecossistema construído por e para aqueles que a empresa tem de mais valioso: nossos colaboradores e clientes. 3tentos, sempre parceiros.
Posso dizer que foi uma alegria só, né? Porque até então sempre tínhamos um bom entendimento, uma boa parceria e uma grande amizade que se criou com 3tentos, com família 3tentos, com funcionários 3tentos, com a direção 3tentos. E nesse passar dos anos aqui fora passou vários consultores da 3tentos, porque até mesmo já fazem 24 anos que a gente trabalha com a 3tentos. E nesses últimos 10 anos agora o Guilherme está com nós aqui. Até brinco que o Guilherme hoje já tem o poder de 99% das decisões a serem tomadas aqui fora pelo manejo a ser feito, né? Só não tem esse 1% por orgulho próprio meu, que eu não deixo entregar o 100% para ele, né? E eu torço porque a 3tentos continue sempre forte, porque é só assim a gente também, a chance de ficar forte sempre é muito grande.
E o apoio da 3tentos sempre conosco, toda a equipe, desde do gerente ao apoio técnico, ao Matias, ao pessoal do escritório, né? Tudo, envolveu todo mundo.
Ela deu todo o apoio necessário para a gente dar a largada, para começar algo novo. Você tem que abrir o campo, você tem que adubar o campo, você tem que preparar o solo, você tem que fazer toda a parte técnica. E a 3tentos acreditou na gente.
Deu apoio para tudo, né?
Eles sabiam que a gente era capaz de conseguir fazer, de conseguir acreditar em produzir numa região diferente. Começar desde o começo, do zero.
Olá, eu sou o Marcelo Landa e hoje eu vou mostrar um tour na nossa unidade de Vera aqui no Mato Grosso. Nossa planta está sendo projetada para produzir 2.500 toneladas por dia de soja, inicialmente, já com um projeto de expansão futura para até 4.000 toneladas por dia. Nossa planta é a mais ao norte do Mato Grosso, né? Então tem uma logística privilegiada. A gente está na BR-163, que é o eixo mundial do agronegócio. A preparação está utilizando equipamentos de última tecnologia. A extração também a gente utiliza equipamentos de ponta para fazer todo o processo, tudo automatizado. Já o biodiesel para 1.000 metros cúbicos por dia. Temos depois o armazém de farelo, que já está sendo montado. Ele tem capacidade para até 30.000 toneladas de farelo. A gente tem separação para farelo de alta proteína e baixa proteína, para atender mercados externos e mercado interno. No fundo a gente tem uma caldeira de alta pressão, uma caldeira de 70 toneladas por hora, com 67 kg de pressão. Ela vai gerar vapor para uma turbina que vai gerar energia elétrica, onde vai tornar a nossa fábrica autossuficiente em vapor e energia elétrica. A gente está recebendo nesse momento a safra de milho. Esse milho a gente está fazendo trading, depois a gente deve expedir e vender ele num melhor momento, né? E a expectativa é que a gente, a partir de janeiro, comece a receber a safra da 2023 da soja, né? Que se inicia em janeiro aqui no Mato Grosso. E a partir de então, dentro do primeiro trimestre, a expectativa é já começar a esmagar essa soja para gerar farelo, gerar biodiesel, todos esses produtos aí industrializados. O produtor aqui do Mato Grosso pode contar então conosco para ser parceiros desde o início, desde o planejamento da lavoura até a entrega dos produtos finais. A gente veio realmente para firmar o pé aqui no Mato Grosso, né, atender da melhor forma esse mercado do agronegócio que hoje é o maior do país aqui, né?
Estamos de volta, se acomodem, todos.
Back. Please have a seat. Welcome back to those of you from home. It's a pleasure to have all of you here with us. We went over the industry, grains, inputs, and let's see what's next. Mauricio Hasson, CFO. Let's give it up for Mauricio. Hello, folks. It's a pleasure to be here. So, it's great to have you. Over to you, Mauricio. I think you've seen a lot of interesting content. Now, let's translate that into numbers. Let me first address inputs. It accounts for 33% of our sales. The expansion we have seen in recent years shows how important our presence is in both Rio Grande do Sul and Mato Grosso. This is the route to expansion. We opened 7, the initial plan was 6. Of the 5 for this year, we've opened 4. Rosário do Sul will be open in Q3, the end of Q3. When we talk of Mato Grosso, we opened a store last year. 2 new ones were opened in Mato Paz and Sorriso earlier this year. And now in Q3, we're opening another 2, Alta Floresta and Porto dos Gaúchos. 3tentos will have 70 stores in 2025. If you're paying attention to the chart from 24 to 25, there's just 1 store remaining. We'll be able to cover a 12.9 million hectares. In simple terms, looking top-down, these 12.9 million broken down between Rio Grande do Sul and Mato Grosso, 7.4, and Rio Grande do Sul, 5.5 in Mato Grosso. Taking into account the average ticket, soybeans, corn, wheat, and rice in Rio Grande do Sul, the average season price is 4,000 reais per hectare. In corn and soybeans in Mato Grosso, it's a little over 3,500 reals. When you take into account these 2 values multiplied by the market share by 2025, 12% Rio Grande do Sul and 5% in Mato Grosso, we can triple our revenue. Our sales was 1.5 billion to 4.5 billion. Mato Grosso is a key factor to generate grains. When we talk about grains, 3tentos now has a crop with 725 million tons of corn, especially because of Mato Grosso. Rio Grande do Sul remains strong, but the main driver is Mato Grosso. And wheat growing only in Rio Grande do Sul because we're more present in the region and more share of the origination there in the region. Translating that into commodity prices today, our corn sales has a 7-fold increase, and the wheat is multiplied by 3 times, a 1.3 billion real increase when we combine these 2 crops. Over to the industrial side. From the onset, the Mato Grosso expansion offsets the industrial potential of the 2 regions where we operate. Rio Grande do Sul will remain at 4,000 tons of processing capacity a day. We're now opening the Cruz Alta expansion in Rio Grande do Sul and Mato Grosso with the introduction of Vera unit. We started out 2,600 ton a day. Marcelo mentioned earlier that for the second quarter of next year, we'll start the start of the operation, our processing capacity will be 2.5 million tons a year of soybeans, 800 million from Mato Grosso. That processed soybeans becomes oil, biodiesel, reaching a 1.5 million tons of soybean meal and 425,000 cubic meters of biodiesel, also in 2025. That takes our sales to 6.7 billion reals only on the industrial part of our business. And how does trading work? Trading for soybeans will always be the surplus. A 1.7 million ton static capacity, we can generate 2.6 million of soybeans. Out of those, 2 million to the industry. In 2025, that surplus of 600,000 will be available to the trading activities, both in Mato Grosso and Rio Grande do Sul. Our revenues by soybean trading, when compared to that bumper crop we had last year, that wouldn't change dramatically, because that's what the company wants. We don't want to increase the soybean trading activities way above that of the industry. And then you may say, well, let's arrange the numbers a little bit. Our sales was 5.3 billion reals. 30% inputs, 20% because of the bumper crop was grains, and a little less than 50% came from the industry. The company is now listed. The market is more familiar with the company now. We have a better coverage from research analysts. They look at the company and say, well, 2022, that's the year the company will have revenues of 7.2, net income of 680 million. Looking further down the road, in sum, this is a company that will have a 14 billion reais in revenue. You're making calculations. You can think about the net income. And then you calculate that again. You look at the share price. Does it make sense? You may wonder. So that's food for thought. All the work we've been doing, all these deliveries, is to reach that 2025 goal. And up to now, we have been working hard, and most of the deliveries we promised, they have been delivered ahead of time. And that's the way it goes. That's great. 14 billion. And here's my question to you. What about the financial services? Is that included in those 14 billion? Nope, not yet. Earlier this month, we acquired Tenso Cap, a financial company. The family members owned the company, but we had made that commitment to transfer that to 3tentos. We made that announcement. It was a small acquisition. Is pending central bank approval, but it's according to plan. It's now being brought in the company. Congratulations, Mauricio. Thank you. Of course, we want to better understand these investments in the financial services segment and what the outlook is. Over to Luis Pedro, Tentos Cap. He's the director of Tentos Cap, and let's give it up for Luis Pedro. Hello. What's up next? Can you tell us? Yes, of course. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you for having me to share a little bit of Tentos Cap. That's the financial institution that we put together in the past 3 years. I'll be showing you the timeline in further detail. We've been focusing on a farmer's demand, a demand that had always been present and regarded as an opportunity. will believe that that could be an interesting vertical to explore. But before talking about the timeline and what we have done already to provide financial services, let me first talk about the why. What were the motivations behind that decision to come up with this portfolio? Financial services that are fast, simple, and transparent. It all starts with the problem. 3tentos Cap is a very new company. We thought about it in 2019, and the mindset is that of a startup. It's a very streamlined structure, thinking first and foremost about the problem to better understand what the issue is as far as financial services are concerned. And we think, just like Alan said, farmers have that mindset. They need that trust with the service provider, with their partners. And institutions haven't been able to deliver that the way farmers expect it. Oh, in other words, there is opportunity to provide those services that are faster, simpler, and more transparent. And since we at 3tentos, we are also farmers, so we can understand what they need, we can think just like a farmer. So there it is, a financial company that can provide speed, simplicity, and transparency. Of course, addressing that issue provided us with the opportunity to expand our relationship with farmers. The relation does not end once they deliver their production, but that can be expanded to when that product becomes money. We remain their partners there. If those farmers are economically successful, they can think about making other investments. And also, those that are not that successful will need some sort of credit line. And we looked at the market potential. 85 billion, that is a market size. That's for working capital focused on the crops we provide services for. Looking at Brazil only. These are expenses that are not input related, fertilizers, CP, or seeds. All those expenses that farmers cannot purchase from 3tentos, be it fuel, payroll, their own salaries, they can finance that in 3tentos Cap. They may buy on credit from 3tentos, or they may need some working capital, additional working capital. They can come to 3tentos Cap. The market size there is 85 billion. I'm talking about Rio Grande do Sul and Mato Grosso. 15 billion in Rio Grande do Sul, the two states combined 36 billion. Just thinking about additional expenses that farmers incur. Now, trying to serve these markets and also to establish that relationship with customers and also capture the value of that market, we started studying the market back in 2019. We tried to come up with the best format to meet that demand that farmers had, based on a series of conversations in the company and a well-known consultant in Rio Grande do Sul. We decided that we had to come up with this format, of course, with the approval of the central bank. So in 2 years, basically, we were granted that license. It's a very stringent approval process, and there were no comments. All the deliveries, all the requests were approved. It was regarded as a sustainable model by the central bank. And we're now concluding 1 year of operation. We were licensed last year, June the 16th, and now we have celebrated 1 year of operations. Here's what we did. On top of those 2 years that we generated traction, we set up the institution, we met all the requirements of central bank, and here's what we have done so far. Over 50 million disbursed, focused on additional expenses and the working capital needs in more than hundreds of operations. These numbers are updated on a daily basis. These operations were conducted in 28 3tentos units. In other words, there's room for improvement within our ecosystem. And here's one of the things we have always been optimistic about is agricultural insurance. When we look at our credit portfolio guarantees, both Tentos Cap and 3tentos, Tentos Cap insurance company was established. It was a joint venture with a very traditional insurance company in the state of Rio Grande do Sul, one of the pioneers of farm insurance in the state and in the country. Tentos Cap Insurance is now operational. And this very complicated year for farm insurance, in just a matter of weeks of operation, we have covered 10,000 hectares and 75 policies. It may seem small, but in a very complicated year with the crop failure we had in the past crop season, this is an interesting number. This is an important number that gives us high hopes. Financial services. This is we're beginning to implement so that we can provide financial education services to farmers. Because there's no point in offering a product and farmers can't tell whether they need it or not, whether they want it or not. Just like 3tentos has always been that pillar to deliver knowledge, research data, so that farmers can produce more. Tentos Cap doesn't have to look at the market and come up with a strategy out of nowhere. All you have to do is to replicate what we do in the agricultural management strategies to financial management strategies too. Farmers can not only produce more, but they can also make more money with the support of Tentos Cap. All right, in 2023, we believe we can provide synergy with 3tentos. We are 100% aligned to have both growth and return. Even when we regard ourselves as a startup, we don't want to sacrifice our returns. Of course, growth is a very important aspect, but at the same time, we want to have returns from day one. In 2023, we're going to have 150 million of disbursements, providing consulting services in Mato Grosso, and our payment company using a digital bank for purchases and credit cards. In 2025, our goal is to reach that 1 billion real mark. An average return on equity of 25% and return on asset at 2.5%. Credit and insurance services is what we had in mind from the get-go. we planned out for both credit and insurance. And the next step is payments, financial services, and that education consulting services, long-term credit, and also investments. That concludes my presentation. I'd like to give you that perspective of delivering results. We do have a financial institutions, a company certified by the central bank, and 3tentos cap will be more and more present. Thank you. Thank you for providing us with that kind of information. This is yet another relevant pillar for 3tentos. All right, moving on, let's look at the future. What's next? Is there something else? Luis and João will be joining us. What hasn't been priced in yet? The outlook is very positive in the industry. Inputs, grains, we're working according to plan. But we are also looking for business improvements at the same time. The 3tentos digital platform, our app is up and running, will concentrate more and more our digital solutions. Terra 3, that integration with financial services and our marketplace. Farmers sell their production to us and will also sell inputs to farmers. We'll close that loop, including financial services and everything that has to do with agriculture with Terra 3. The digitalization effort there's no turning back to that digitalization. And we are leading the pack as far as innovation goes. And on top of that, we have to talk about carbon. We have a consolidated platform. That's the Renova Bio program. Our biodiesel production generates carbon credits. That's the C-Bios. They are now traded. Our expectations is to produce 200,000 C-Bios. That's our goal for this year. A hot product, as you know. And once we reach the full production in Mato Grosso, 2025, our production will be about 450,000 C-Bios a year. If you are good at math, and you are, 200 reals, that's the potential revenue that can make our business even more viable and help us in the investment payback. With Renova Bio, we have 14,000 farms that have been registered and environmentally assessed. These 14,000 farms provide soybeans to 3tentos, and that soybeans will become meal and biodiesel, and through biodiesel, of course, will generate those C-Bios. And at the same time, we have carbon on the ground, effective carbon capture through agriculture. Now we are at the measuring phase. We do have a project with 40 farmers that have been picked, and they'll become our partners to take all the necessary measurements. So these 40 farms are testing a carbon calculator we've developed with consultants, and we're going to expand the customer base, integrate that to Renova Bio, to those 14,000 farmers that have been registered, That number will be growing, of course. And then we'll find ways to certify and monetize. That is part and parcel of the agenda of any company. And of course, 3tentos has to be involved along the way. And that's our farmer. Someone who is well-informed, connected, looking for more knowledge. That's the 3tentos customer. They are closer and closer to us. Because agriculture tells us you have to innovate. More technology, more results, more deliveries. And farmers are stepping up to the plate. Just like 3tentos, they want to deliver these results to society, to the market overall. And we are very confident in what we do. We're coming to an end of our conversation. And I have to admit, I am among partners, and I'm very pleased to see the energy of the team. People believing in farmers, in agriculture, and in the future of this industry. And in a market in which food and energy is just important. 21 bags was per hectare was our production. Now is way over 60. Now have 270 million tons. 73 is the total area now. You can see the amount of investment made by agriculture, farmers, companies, and that's our commitment in 3tentos, to invest in technology. Why is it? Because Brazil is the number one soybean exporter in the world. Brazil is the second corn exporter in the world. Brazil ranks number one as far as cattle raising is concerned. We're number one in poultry. Poultry is consumed all over the world. There are people that are starving, unfortunately. The market where we operate is huge, and it never stops growing. And Brazil has room to grow even further. And 3tentos makes that commitment for both. And in swine production, we rank number 4. And this is our slide, the last slide before the Q&A session. Once again, this is agribusiness. That's the 3tentos business model. We don't sell inputs in retail only. We're not only a trading company. We are not a soybean crusher only. 3tentos is the entire ecosystem. We make that synergy happen. And it's no easy feat. It cannot be repeated that easily. And we are devoted to what we do. Return on investment, on invested capital, is key to 3tentos. When we have over 1,700 people in our team, I can't emphasize that enough. Not even a day goes by in which I don't talk about 4 basic principles. I think it's valid for every business. Customers, without them, no business can survive. Can be a farmer. It can be protein companies that purchase from us, fuel companies that purchase from us to do other businesses, glycerin whatever, these are our customers, and we try to serve them as best as we can, and generating value to them too. If those 1,700 employees are not aware that we are responsible for our cash, they shouldn't be working for 3tentos. Every day, we generate and consume cash. And cash is something very important to us. We pay close attention to cash. We know how much cash we can generate. And will be even better. Return on invested capital. That's why I'm sharing those pillars with you. We'll keep focusing on having return for ourselves, for investors. 3tentos is very proud to be working with the capital and grow with the market. And then the 4th pillar, growth with profitability. We're not looking at the first line. We're looking from the first all the way to the bottom line. So here's our commitment. We can now be proud to make that public commitment. Marcelo, myself, the entire senior management, and every 3tentos employee will make the same commitment. Thank you, Luiz João. Would you like to say something else? Let me just say that before the Q&A session, let me just make clear of how simple the company is. That's the number one value, being simple. Simplicity is key to us. I think you've met the entire senior management. Everyone works hands-on, hard workers, committed to delivering results. Just over the break, there's a saying, no one is forced to make any promises, but once you make a promise, you have to deliver. This is what we do on a daily basis. Let's hear it for this wonderful, successful story. Thank you, João. Thank you, Luis. Congratulations once again for this 3tentos days. A lot of details, transparency, that vision for growth, and make good use of the opportunities that agribusiness provides to us. Before we move on to the Q&A session, let's watch this video. I'm sure you will enjoy it fully.
We need to be proud of being in this business. We need to be confident in the present and in the future. And also recognizing the work done by those top 5 professionals. Recanto do Maestro Resort is well known by those who have a mystical side to them, known for its positive energy. I'd like you all, as you leave home tomorrow, be sure that João Marcelo, myself, all of us will always be here, thinking of those objectives, working side by side. You've seen the pictures. The picture from New York is a random thing. The rest of the pictures are here with you, with the team, out on the field.
Assim como no Top Gun.
Just as in Top Gun, the movie, we only have Top Guns here with you. That's why this is the best area in the company. It's done by you, by people, by us.
Tivesse que começar tudo.
Had to start all over again 27 years ago. The only thing I would ask is to have the same people around me in this journey. When you talk about trust, eye to eye, that's what I'm talking about. That's what we want. That's what we need, to be aligned. But we do have a mission to be the biggest and the best, and will be. This team will make it happen. So let's hear it for this beautiful video full of energy. And on the same note, we'll now start our Q&A session. This is how it's going to work. Send your questions. I have my cell phone with me. We are connected with the team, and we'll relay the questions you have to the team. Here in the audience, we'll have microphones spread across the auditorium. Just raise your hand. We'll take a mic to you. And if you want to ask your question to a specific person, just let us know. Otherwise, our team is here ready to address your questions. So let's get started. Okay, are you ready? Okay, who'd like to start? Please, if you could please state your name and then ask your question and choose who you want to answer, please. Good afternoon. My name is Mateus from UBS. I'd like to talk to Mauricio's point. Cash generation. You have a development plan which is exceeding all expectations. But we start looking a bit further. After delivering the plan in Mato Grosso, after delivering the stores plan for this year, the question comes to mind, what else? What is next? Are you going to be opening more stores? Are you going to be expanding in Mato Grosso? If I heard it right, you may be thinking about expanding the plan in Mato Grosso. So in a nutshell, what are the next steps, and when, what kind of milestones should we wait to see going forward? Thank you. Thank you, Mateus. Mauricio, over to you. Thank you, Mateus. That's a very important topic you raise, Mateus. During those investors meeting, we've been talking about that. The company's calling is to have balance across its ecosystem. So it is only natural for us to expect expansion along the same lines. Every now and then, the ecosystem might find some imbalance. You may advance on the industry front or in the inputs front, but the trend is to strike a balance. Of course, we also have an industrial side, which is also strong. But as you said, in Mato Grosso, in our plant in Vera, our capacity of 2,600 tons a day, that capacity can be expanded. The original design contemplates an expansion and contemplates it very easily. So that's a separate chapter. That might happen in the coming years. Of course, it'll depend on different situations, different variables that have to do with the business itself. New investments, well, we also need to think about growing where we know what to do when we think about the industry. So in addition to that, or going beyond the industry, what could we do? Adjacent activities. And in that case, logistics comes to mind, of course. Okay, thank you, Mauricio. Thank you, Mateus, for the question. Let's move on. Who else? Raise your hand if you have a question, please. Your name, Danielle, from a news site. My question is about hedging. You did mention that you will have a hedging for growers. So where does that stand? Is that happening directly with growers? Can they access that through the app? Very good. Luis, would you take that? Daniel's question about hedging. Daniel, one of our characteristics that you've seen, one of the pillars of the company is safety. And of course, we cannot forget hedging when we talk about safety, not only for the company, but of course extended to our customer growers. And we like to emphasize the importance of understanding what their cost per hectare is in terms of bags of corn, bags of wheat, or soybeans. We are not going to be talking about rice right now, but we encourage rice growers to do the same, to hedge through production. Barter is also very important for the company, not only on the spot, but sometimes is forward lock, forward sell the inputs or seeds, and then offsets that with the grain. So inputs vis-a-vis grains. 3tentos extends that hedge, of course. You've seen this before. Since 2004, we've been customers of SC Stone and then StoneX. So 3tentos is very proud of having those financial advisors both here and in the U.S. But have growers think about premiums and basis points and operate Chicago by themselves. That's a long journey. But barter, forward selling when they buy inputs and when they sell grains, that's something we can do, and they should hedge, and they can do that using the app. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Luis. Who else? Your name and your question, please. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lucas. My question is, in addition to the challenges coming from the war in Ukraine, I'd like to know how is 3tentos getting ready to deal with recession expectations in the U.S. and Europe, the slowdown in China, amidst the company's expansion plan in Mato Grosso. My question is for Luis Osorio. Thank you, Lucas. Luis, you're back on stage with the answers. I was talking during the break with some people that this threat of recession, we are coming out of a pandemic, we're still going through the consequences of that, and then unfortunately the war now involving Russia and Ukraine. What kind of impact does that have on food chains, energy chains, and across industries? And of course, I'd say, Kelly, that food comes number one in our concern. So we need to be ready to face problems arising from those events. But at the same time, we need to be aware that we're dealing with a product that cannot be replaced, that is human food. And with that responsibility, and with Brazil being such a power in agriculture, that's what leads us to work every day to move forward together. 3tentos is not a company that is subject to commodity prices. Soybeans at $17 a bushel, or $13 as it is right now or just now. For us, we're always working on our margins. Our customer, Daniel, our customers also work around their margins so that we can invest correctly. We want to be responsible as we invest, and then we'll get the respective results. So all those events, those world events, they won't come to a halt. Unfortunately, the last pandemic was 1918, and then in 2020, another pandemic. So situations like that might happen more frequently. I hope not. I hope I'm wrong. But we need to be ready for those unforeseen events, and we are. Thank you, Luis, for your answer. Anybody else? Here, your name and your question. Leandro from Bradesco BBI. 3tentos has a growth strategy which is quite organic. You've been growing through opening new stores. And we see the competition being a bit more aggressive in terms of acquisitions. So I'd like to know, how do you see that trade-off between growing organically vis-a-vis growing via acquisition, especially now that you go into a new region, Mato Grosso? Mauricio, can you take that one? Yeah. Hi, Leandro. Good afternoon. That's always a good question. That topic will always be a focus of attention for us. 3tentos is very agnostic, if I may, in terms of growing through acquisitions. We always screen all the opportunities that come to us, and we also do our own prospecting. We recently assessed what would make more sense in Mato Grosso for certain regions. So for now, we've been very efficient, and we are quite happy with the results we've achieved in terms of growing organically. And I was talking about this during the break. At the end of the day, and using something João Marcelo does all the time, we do people M&A. When we hire a team in Mato Grosso, we are hiring experienced people, knowledgeable people, people who know the region, and people who are in line with our culture, with our business plan, and they bring to the table a very positive revenue potential. That's also an M&A of sorts. So, in summary, one of our strengths is the ability to know how to grow organically. But as for M&As, it's always in our radar, right? Always in our radar. Thank you. Your name and question, please. Mateus from AKA Investments. I have two questions. Number one, about industry. You only work on soybean crushing, but given the capacity around corn, it would make sense to take a step forward and start producing corn-based ethanol, correct? And number two, as for Mato Grosso, what kind of profitability you have in Mato Grosso when compared to Rio Grande do Sul? Thank you. Thank you, Mateus. João Marcelo. Thank you, Mateus. Yes. 3tentos industry track includes origination. So we started fostering inputs and then generating grains from inputs. And then with the grains, we took the step of going to the step of processing soybeans. As for other crops, such as corn, of course, that is in our radar. It is within our scope, within our discussions of future plans. As for margins, your second question, our job in Mato Grosso seeks to reach that technical level of consistency, to be in line with the market, across our proposals around digital, value-added, and Mato Grosso works with slightly lower margins, but also with a lower cost per client or per customer. So the same consultant services a larger number of farmers, which somewhat offsets that loss in profitability. But the market in Mato Grosso is very, very healthy too. And we are always focused on efficiency, low cost, adequate levels of expenses, and so on. That's always on our radar as well. Marcelo, if you please stay, I have a question coming from the internet about Mato Grosso. The question from Wagner from TVB3. Thank you, Wagner, for sending your question. Mato Grosso do they have larger farms in Mato Grosso than in Rio Grande do Sul? The size of properties in Mato Grosso, that's the question. How are they being serviced by the competition that you have? Do you expect lower margins? To what percentage when compared to Rio Grande? So several questions. Thank you, João. Eduardo, sorry. So the way we service our customers and vis-a-vis the competition, as Ben-Hur said, the idea is to set ourselves apart from the competition. We may end up having to go over that barrier. But in Mato Grosso, there was plenty consolidation. Many customers were left hanging out to dry because those consultants who were servicing them moved from company to company. And we are exploring that opportunity. In addition to those people, M&A, quote unquote, that was mentioned, we're also exploring this moment of certain difficulty that the competition is facing. As for margins, it varies depending on the segment. As for seeds, there we work with resellers, so we have lower margins. In Rio Grande, we produce seeds, so margins are a bit higher. But it's a healthy market because all customers buy seeds. It's a buying region. They cannot save seeds in Mato Grosso. So the potential for sales of seeds is much higher in Mato Grosso. As for fertilizers, it is also a market that brings fertilizers from other areas, unlike in Rio Grande, where the port is quite close. So our logistics efficiency helps us get to margins which are closer to Mato Grosso. And in terms of chemicals, CPs, the margin is also slightly lower when compared to the scale of growers in the area. But as inputs, as Benur said, in terms of inputs, in most cases, we were able to preserve margins of around 1 to 2 percentage points, which is close to what we have in the South. Thank you, Eduardo. Would you like to complement what he said? No, it's all good. It's all good. So next, anybody here? We have a question from you. Your name, please. Gabriel from Citibank. Number one, just to update a bit, the input segment offers credit to growers, correct? You sell inputs, but you also sell credit. How do you see the interest rates issue in Brazil? How can that impact the business? And number two, in reference to biodiesel, when you had the IPO, we were expecting to see an increase in biodiesel. There was a cut of 10%. Until not long ago, there was discussion about bringing that back on track, the biodiesel mix in Brazil. So 2 questions on that. Number one, negotiation. Moving from an auction-based market to a direct sales market. How do you see that unfolding? And how have discussions been with the government to resume the biodiesel mix in Brazil? My name is Gabriel from Citibank. Okay, let's start. Would you like to start talking about credit and then biodiesel? Yes. Hi, Gabriel. The impact that interest rates or even inflation have on agriculture is clear and relevant. And it is so across all other industries. And how can we approach or address that? I'm sorry to sound a bit repetitive, but we work on the cost per hectare. Growers in Mato Grosso, they focus on barter and on soward selling their products. Paraná the same, Rio Grande the same. Other states such as Goiás and Maranhão are going down the same line. So what we need to do, or that we should do, Gabriel, in terms of interest rates, is to have that as yet another component as you account for your cost per hectare. When we forward sell grains, we are doing the same with foreign exchange rates, interest rates, freight costs, and the port costs as well. We, as growers, the company does exactly the same at the same time. So that's what reassures us. That's what I emphasize. 3tentos is not closely related to commodity prices, commodity cycles. No, we've been around for 27 years. I remember People say I'm old, but I remember of September 11th. I remember where I was, and then the impeachments, another impeachment, and then pandemic, the war. So we need to be ready for those situations. Can I move on to the second question? As for biodiesel, I'm not really sure how long this will last. We're going through an energy transition the world over. Fossil fuels still have room to grow in terms of share vis-a-vis the energy demands still in place. But other solutions are coming up: wind energy, solar energy, and even sugarcane-based ethanol or corn ethanol or biodiesel. And so if we look at our tropical country, we are sitting on a huge competitive advantage, and we are working on it. We know there is a law that has been passed at Congress of 15% of mix. That law had provisions that allowed it to reach to 8%. We're now at 10%. If the auctions are now done and over with, and today we are working directly with our customers, buyers, distributors, and our margins have become much more stable than they used to be. Today, that buy/sell ratio is much safer than it was. Of course, we won't have big margins, leaps, or sharp drops. Since 2014, we have never had a negative line in our balance sheet. 3tentos is quite focused on seeds, is quite focused on CPs, fertilizers, grain, trades, and then industry and so forth and so on. And that has provided us with very solid results. And it's nice to be here to share that with you. Thank you, Luis. Thank you for explanations. Thank you for the question. Another question here. Your name, please. Thank you. My name is Tiago from BTG Pactual. My three questions, if I may. So ask the first one, and then are they connected? They are somewhat connected. I think it's easier for them to understand if I ask them at once. Going back to Mato Grosso stores performance a year later, a year after, down the road after the IPO, you have already talked about margins slightly lower, but within the expected range. But when we look at the result for Q1 for the company, it gives us the impression that the revenue performance for the stores, that performance is much better. It's a short history, but it seems to be much better than we expected 1 year ago. I'd like you to please give us some more color on that. What has been the positive or even negative surprise? That's the first question. Number two, also going back to the corn-based ethanol, that's a valid question, and it's worth a while insisting on it. What is preventing you from going there? Or what would be the level of return you're waiting to reach before you go into processing corn to produce ethanol? In Mato Grosso, most likely. And lastly, when we look at this last video from your sales convention, the question that arises is what would be the main KPI or the main indicator that the company insists on along with consultants? What are they going after when they meet with customers? Volume, share, revenue, what would be the main incentive mechanism to encourage consultants to get there, to go the extra mile? Let's start with Mato Grosso expansion plan. Yes. Sales, revenues, of course, is exceeding actually our plans, the models we had worked on at the IPO time. Part of that is being driven by price, of course. The price of inputs have gone up, fertilizers the same, the price for CPs, seeds. but also is being driven by our efficiency in dealing with our teams. Teams are being well hired, if I may. We talked about people here thoroughly, and we will continue to do so. As we replicate our culture, we are able to attract and retain talents. So all of that combined with value is leading to that good traction. And we are quite optimistic, already thinking about opening up more stores than we had in our original plan, which will further increase our sales level during the IPO, pre-IPO level. About ethanol-based, corn-based ethanol.
Well, ethanol is just a consequence of everything we do. We've been discussing that. We have a study group put together. It will be analyzed as far as execution, capex. There will be a business plan, but once we sell inputs, once we generate the raw material, in other words, the purchase of corn, that will have to fit within a future expansion of the company. There's another one. What is the team looking for in each customer? Thank you, João Marcelo. As far as KPIs are concerned, we follow the market trends, and there are several suppliers from chemicals. We'll look at the potential, just like Alan made the marketing presentation. The potential per hectare per crop, the adoption rate of seeds, and the number we're making. And we want to expand our market share. That is valid for segment and subsegment. As far as crop protection, the subsegment of herbicides went up, both in adoption of pre-emerging because of the weed resistance, as well as the value. So we are challenging the team to bring in more revenue. So we have revenue, we have margins. It's a KPI for the entire commercial department to maintain the margin, to deliver results. But the fundamentals to have a growing market share, according to plan, that's within the people. We go back to talking about people, their training, the technical expertise around our research facilities, recognition. So you bring in new employees, oftentimes from the competition, and we train them as far as our culture is concerned, so that they can make decisions in the way farmers manage their crops. And then that will bring results. In other words, make farmers be successful. And then, as a consequence, you be successful as well. That's for both Mato Grosso and Rio Grande do Sul. Would you like to say something else? Yes, Kelly. I think we should talk about the PPR program. It's been in existence since 2004. It was refurbished this year for the 22-23 crop years. Every manager has that set of goals, and that cascades down throughout the organization. Everyone will benefit. The sales team, for example, they focus on sales commission and, of course, reaching on those goals. Our KPI is net income. We use net income to reach our set of goals. That's clear. Growth, generating results. Wonderful, folks. Okay, we have time for just one more question. Your name and question, please. Cesar Miguel. Cell DTAC. No one knows what DTAC stands for. My partners allow me to say. 3tentos is not what I expected, so they authorized me to talk about it. Pactual, Citibank, and others are my competitors, technically. They're distributors of securities, right? Cell was, when we used to be a BMF brokerage company some 30 years ago. Today, Cell was recreated starting in 2019. Now it's called DTAC. It's made public. Distributor of agricultural bonds and securities and commodities. In the past, you used to have a CPR. All these notes called CPR no longer exist. Write that down. You have these new notes. They have become credit or letter of credit, so to speak, because this is my final question. Are you considering going abroad? I'm not your competitor. I'm a third party of the international grain system, if you allow me, if I may. There are only 3 organizations that operate soybeans. You know that. Okay, in conclusion, I am a seller. I'm a farmer. I've always sold soybeans in the Chicago Board of Trade. I have to conclude. It's over 3 p.m. I'm sorry. 3tentos is doing the 3 things. All I want to do is to become a partner of 3tentos. Thank you for your comments. Would you like to make a final comment? No, that's fine. Of course, our focus is Brazil, Rio Grande do Sul, Mato Grosso. We know what the opportunities for growth are, but that's our focus. We'll be reaching 14 billion in 2025. And we do have a plan, and that is 30-30. 3tentos may not go overboard, but people abroad will hear of our importance and how relevant agribusiness is to us. Let's bring the 3tentos team. I would like to thank all of you for attending the 3tentos Day. Thank you once again very much for being here. Those of you here, those of you at home, let's give it up for the most important element of this conference, those that gave us their attention. It was wonderful. We'll be back providing you with even more good news. Bye-bye. Thank you.